I'm gonna give you some of the best keys that you can utilize to bulletproof your hips, and we're gonna start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you smash that notification bell so we can help you become a beast. So here at Garage Strength, we train a lot of athletes that are gonna deal with utilizing their hips. So if you're a wrestler and you're trying to sprawl on an athlete, if you're a football player and you're trying to cut a specific way, that cut that's a little bit sharper is almost entirely due to your hip strength, your hip mobility, your hip stability. It's gonna help you get into that drive phase a little bit more rapidly. Even if you're a swimmer, you're coming off the wall, you're gonna be utilizing your hips to extend as you come and drive off the wall, or if you're coming off the block. So every single sport is going to be utilizing your hips, and we need to consider, if we are going to analyze our hip function, we know that the hip is responsible for extending forward. So the hips extend the pelvis forward, and that's going to be more of our hamstrings. It's going to be our glute max. If we can think about abduction, abduction, so moving our hips laterally away from that center line, away from that midline. It's gonna be more of the TFL, glute minimus, glute med. That's gonna be where we're trying to think about actually cutting or opening our knees here. And then if we can think about adduction, hip adduction, okay, we're bringing that knee in. We're gonna be focusing on the adductor longus, brevis, gracilis, and that's a lot of our groin, okay? So the hip is not just one specific muscle, but it's a large region that's responsible for a lot of different muscular actions. And so when we're doing sports like Olympic weightlifting, wrestling, swimming, field hockey, football, anything, we have to know what the responsibility is of the hip area, what those specific muscles are, and then how we can actually improve the functionality. And that's going to take us into all of our exercises to help you bulletproof your hips. One of my favorite movements to utilize in opening up my hips is, like, let's say I'm sitting in an airplane for a long period of time. I'm flying to freaking Uzbekistan and I'm just sitting for hours upon hours, right? So that what ends up happening is that when you're seated, you start to shorten up your hamstrings, you start to round your upper back, and you actually have back issues related to what you're doing in your hip area, okay? So I wanna see opening up that hip flexor here, which is gonna be a little bit more of my quads, okay? And I wanna focus on just doing a real simple split squat from a deficit position. So this could be done where I'm either having my hands upward here, and this is a great movement if we have wrestlers that are always in a specific position. If we have people who do clean and jerks and they're always in a specific position for their jerk, they can actually utilize this to open up both sides so they stop rotating to one side or the other. Okay, so if I can get here and try and think about getting nice and deep, and what I do after I travel, I might do deficit split squats all the way down to, I'll put a towel on my hotel room floor and come all the way down to that position to really try to open up my hips. And what ends up happening is that your lower back hurts substantially less because your hips start to be a little bit more mobile, and you regain that stability. Wow, that was a little tight on that side. Oh, let's focus a little more. There we go. Now I'm starting to feel a lot better. And you start to gain that stability, mobility, and everything starts to really open up. So that's one key factor. When we're starting to open up our hips, you're gonna notice that your lower back feels a lot better and you have a lot more fluidity in your movement in general. Now we're heading into one of my favorite movements for my hips, and this is an exercise that I have almost every athlete do as a warm-up if they've got lower back issues, and this is a side band walk. And we've got our power elastic here, so we can utilize the power elastic in this form here, where we go side band walk. I want just a little bit of a knee flexion, okay? And remember here, we're doing hip abduction out, okay? And I like to have this part with my right here, that's the eccentric, so we wanna go a little bit slower, a little bit more controlled, okay? So I like having this overhead position because it's gonna wake up my hips from that global perspective. Now, one thing I love about the power elastics is I can also just throw this right around my shoe, move the knot to the side, and now I'm here. Ooh, and this is gonna actually hit a little bit more of adduction, okay? So just in one movement with the power elastics, we're going from focusing on hip abduction because the band was on the outside, to hip adduction because of the way the handles pull. You have to control with your groin a little bit more. Now, I like to pair those monster band walks, those side band walks, with an exercise that I got specifically from Will Fleming of 1 kilo weightlifting. And so Will and I were recently in Monterrey, Mexico, and we were doing some workouts. Okay, so one of those exercises that Will used was a 90-90 press out. And this is my horribly tight side. And so I even felt as I was doing this, I started to really shift to one way. I started to shift to my left really, really poorly. I think likely from being a shot putter and favoring that one side, but I'm really, really tight to this one side, and then I'll switch, is that we're gonna be here, okay? We wanna have that hip extension. We sit down, come back up. Down, come back up, okay? So do each side. You can switch here. And try and really squeeze, bring the hips through. And I like pairing that with side band walks. You can use this as a warm-up to really open up those hips, and you can use a 25-pound kettlebell. You don't have to get crazy. Use something light. Think about the muscular action that you're focusing on, and that's gonna lead to a drastic improvement in the overall hip stability. Okay, so the next two exercises that I love to utilize in this, these are movements that you could put inside of a full leg workout. You could do this as a warm-up. You could do this as just, you're trying to hit some decent mobility. We're gonna hit right now a side cross step up. So I want this foot on the box, and I want to think about driving here and then a nice slow eccentric back up. And I want you to really, really think about that outside position of your glutes, okay? So this side's not bad. Back up. Now we want to hit both sides. Let's see how this side is. A little tighter, not terrible. Oh yeah. And you'll even see, like on my left side here, I feel this more in my groin on my left side. My butt is a little bit more active. On my right side, my groin feels fine, but my glute is a little more inactive. And so when you notice those things, try to pay attention to that, so that as you're going through your workout and as you're trying to improve over a long period of time, you want to iron that out. Now, the next exercise, single leg glute bridge. I remember when BRUNO was posting these on T Nation back in the early 2000s, 2010s, Mike Boyle. I thought this was the most ridiculous stuff. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was a joke. It was an absolute clown show. Now, I suck at them, so that's probably why I didn't like them. What I've seen now is I'm still not that good at them, but I might go here, come up, and I could do this from the floor. I like keeping my toes up. And you can see I'm still struggling to get that hip extension. So that side cross step up, we were focusing on abduction and adduction. Now with that single leg glute bridge, I'm focusing on hip extension. And so if we want to get really creative with that position, we can take a book out of Joel Seedman, right? Now we can do some rows in that glute bridge position. We can do some presses in a glute bridge position, in that unilateral position, and that's gonna help improve our hip extension globally. So we can take bits and pieces, put it into our training system, and really figure out how to bulletproof our hips while working from that global perspective. Okay, so this is arguably one of the best exercises, one for your groin, but remember, the groin is part of your hip, okay? That's part of the actions around adduction, abduction. The gracilis specifically is an area that a lot of soccer players have issues with, a lot of throwers have problems with. It's an area that can lead to a lot of problems, even if we're cutting from lacrosse or football. So what I like to do is an exercise totally ripped off from Kevin Simons of Alpha Barbell in Seattle. He recently sent me this, and I've been playing around with it almost every single day, and it's absolutely insane. Is we want to get on a back extension. And so what I do first is I want to get my heel in that pad here. So if I had a foot pad, I would put just one foot in there, okay? And I want to get this attached. I want to come down and back up, okay? Oh, you could hear, hopefully you could hear that. I think that's my pectineus popping. Oh, back up and try and push that heel down. And what's funny is that I popped right inside, right near my pubic bone, okay? So when that happens, it's almost always like this huge release in my back. Now, if we have athletes that tend to be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more explosive with the groin, what we already have our shot putters doing here is they might do, let's say they do 4, and then they do drop and come back up, and it's all pulling from that groin. So you've got to take it nice and easy though, because it's a challenging movement. Now, Kevin did this movement on a glute ham. So the progression would be, you do this assisted, right? Then you do it with a little bit of a load. Then you do it from that drop position, all on the back extension, Roman chair. Then after that, you could get on the glute ham like crazy Kevin does, and you could do a full range of motion and really start to play around with improving your overall hip stability. Okay, so the most important factors here when we're talking about bulletproofing our hips, you like that buzzword, is that we are focusing on the actions of the hip region and those specific muscular groups, those specific muscles that do specific things. So raising, hip flexors, raising your femur up, extending your hips, hip abduction and adduction, and recognize that all these movements are targeting all those different things, okay? So we want to train from that global perspective, but you can utilize these movements as warm-ups. You can utilize these movements inside of an actual workout, inside of a training system, and so play around with them, get better at specific things. Try to take notice of where you're a little tighter, maybe where you're a little more inactive, and try to improve all those muscular actions over a long period of time, and that's going to enhance how your hips function and the actions that they do throughout your life and throughout sports performance. So if you need help with hip training and actually improving your overall sports performance, click on the link down below. You can head over, you can pick up a program at garagestrength.com, our How to Get Faster strength training program that's going to help improve your hip functionality and your overall speed in whatever athletic world that you're participating in. If you want more content around specific areas and bulletproofing those regions, click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.